All right. Okay, I think we are live. I want to say good afternoon to everyone who has chosen to take their lunch break with us today. We wish you bon appetit and hope that the next 45 minutes is both informative and inspiring. Each of us is on a part of a global movement, a movement to create more of a sustainable and circular economy here on Earth. So my name is Inga. I'm the marketing and communications manager here at Circunomics, and I'm joined today by three experts in their respective fields. Today, they've come together to discuss an important topic when it comes to achieving effective circularity, and that is reverse logistics. So to those of you that have joined us, we invite you to throw any questions you may have into the chat at any time. We will do our best to answer them over the course of the next 40 to 45 minutes. But I want to quickly introduce our panelists, and then I will turn the time over to them. So first, we have Philippe Bruneau with a master's in science, a master's of science in mechanical engineering and management from the Technical University in Munich. Philip has held several positions in small to medium-sized enterprises to include strategy consulting at Accenture and Bain & Company, as well as in private equity at Callista Private Equity. In 2021, Philip founded and currently serves as the CEO of LibCycle, a logistics company specializing in lithium-ion batteries, and LibCycle is headquartered in Munich. So hi, Philip. We're so glad you can join us today. In a couple of sentences, can you tell us why this topic of reverse logistics rings important to you and to the work that you do with LibCycle?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Circular economy or the reverse logistics is an important part of the circular economy because we are focusing a lot to become carbon neutral in the producing the batteries, mining the batteries, recycling the batteries, and between all the steps are logistics steps in between. And so a huge portion of the whole costs at the moment and of the CO2 emissions come from the logistics, and we have to optimize this reverse logistics to become really sustainable in the whole circular economy. And that's why we are focusing on this topic and we are approaching the challenges.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Niels Steinbrecher. He's the managing director at TESS Sustainable Battery Solutions. Niels comes to us with a master's of science in business administration with a focus in electrical engineering. He finished his master's thesis at the Hong Kong University on the topic of sustainable transport for Hong Kong. Together with his team at TESS, they are on a mission to make TESS the global leader in lithium-ion battery recycling and to support their clients in closing the loop for a circular economy. Thanks for joining us, Niels. We're glad you're here. Can you tell us in just a couple of sentences why this topic of reverse logistics stands out to you as an important topic in the world right now?
Yeah, very good. Thanks for the introduction, Inga. I mean, Philip already mentioned it. He's the logistics experts. So I probably say it from our clients, right? So our clients obviously are OEMs, but also cell manufacturers. So everyone who has waste material, and they are not logistic companies, right? So they need their waste or their batteries, wherever they are, to be transported to us, right? So that's definitely one reason why this is important, right? To get the battery to the recycler. And yeah, the other point is obviously every company has to optimize themselves in a way, and there's not a recycler around every corner. So we are a global company, but I think recycling will happen mainly regional. So we need to optimize in the region our recycling facilities. We can't have recycling facilities in all European countries. So batteries need to be transported, right, from one country to the other to our locations. And that's why this is, one of the key topics to get to work for us.
Great, thank you. And then finally, we have our very own Sebastian Bujnoch from here at Circunomics. He's our senior business developer. Sebastian's previous positions were concentrated in product development, product design, and product engineering. For 14 years, he worked both in China and Hong Kong manufacturing before joining a German recycling company in Hong Kong. It was here where he began focusing on providing circular economy solutions. Sebastian returned to us here in Europe in 2022. Sebastian, can you tell us why you consider this topic to be a critical one at this point in history?
Yeah, thanks, Inga. Yeah, similar as Philip and Niels already mentioned. So everyone is talking about the circular economy. We've been doing a linear economy, like producing stuff, selling stuff for basically 100 years or longer. But the circular economy, where you really want to take back products, repair them, remanufacture them, repurpose them, and then recycle them, that's a bit of a new thing. And as Philip mentioned, whatever you do in there, whether it comes to manufacturing or remanufacturing, you always have this logistics piece in between. You always have to transport stuff from A to B. Now, for the linear economy, we mastered that over the last 100 years. We are really experts at producing stuff, put it in a warehouse, sending it out to our customers and to our clients. But when it comes to returning these, that's always for companies, that's an exception, right? They often don't have the processes. They don't have the IT support. Many big ERP systems don't really support that process of returning a product back. And one basically story a friend of mine told me proves that. So he ordered a spare battery, I believe it was for his e-bike, through one of the big online shopping companies. It was the wrong one. He wanted to send it back, and they told him, just keep it. It's too much hassle for us to send it back. It's a special transport. We don't want to touch it. We just send you the correct one free of charge. If you don't need it, give it away or dispose it in a recycling. Please don't throw it away. So yeah, with that, I actually want to ask you, Philip, when it comes to batteries recycling, you're doing battery transports, reverse logistics. Where are we at the moment? Where the status quo? Is it getting better, or is it still, a lot of work, a lot of hassle in transporting these babies?
Good question. Thank you for that. The current challenges are, so we have a variety of challenges at the moment we are seeing on the market, but to the first part, it's getting better, because the volumes are rising in the market develops, and we as companies develop with the markets. And there are a couple of challenges we are still seeing. The main topic is the status waste. So the batteries are classified as waste when they are transported to the recycling. And so we have a lot of compliance issues regarding the transport, regarding the storage, regarding how logistics is in general done, that we, as a larger company, subcontract several of smaller companies, and they do it for us. This is not possible in a good way regarding the waste, because then everything has to be, or is more transparent. It's more, you need a higher compliance, and especially when you transport it internationally, then you lose all the flexibility regarding subcontracting, changing the routes, bringing different parts together on one lane, because we are seeing, for example, we have a customer in Hungary. They produce battery cells, and they want to ship it to the Netherlands. For that, we need notification when it's waste or hazardous waste. Notification is an export allowance for that is needed to transport the battery transporter. And we have to ask Hungary if it's okay that we export the waste. We have to ask, for example, the Czech Republic if it's okay to drive through the country. We have to ask Germany if we can drive through Germany, and then ask the Netherlands if it's okay to import the waste. This is quite a long procedure, because every authority in the country has to accept it. So it lasts between 6 to 9 months, every notification, and you have to and you have a dedicated transport route. So you have one starting point and one destination. You are not allowed to change the route in between. If, for example, the road is closed, you have to ask the authority which road you can use, but this will take a couple of days, sometimes weeks, and then the transports are stopped. Only that you make 100 meters change in the route. And this makes it hard from a logistics perspective. Everything is so compliant, and you have to deal with the national waste laws in each country, because there are different tracking systems as well. You have to know different approvals you have to get, and all this makes it hard to make, because it's a totally different setup, like it's done in the normal standard logistics or the normal dangerous goods logistics. Yeah, so you're on
mute, I think, Sebastian. Can't hear
Well,
you.
you made a good point, Philip, there. So batteries, logistics-wise, are in the best case a dangerous good, right? So when we're talking about new batteries that are getting shipped from production to a car company that's using it, for example. But the worst case, they are basically classified as waste. And that's a huge challenge we have, of course, in the reverse logistics, because if you classify something as waste, you're in a completely different sort of set of laws. In Germany, it's the Abfallgesetz. So that means you can't really store it in a normal facility. You have to be a recycler or a waste company to store these items. You have to have, as you mentioned, Philip, special permissions. And when it comes to crossing borders, even in the European Union, it's a total hassle. And as you said, 6 to 9 months is quite typical of sending waste batteries over a border. Looking outside Europe, do you have any idea how that works in the US? Is that a bit more favorable to this, or Asia? Or do we face similar issues there in these countries?
So since we are only operating in Europe, I have only a basic knowledge in other countries, but in the US, they have different states, and the waste laws in different states are different. So in some states, they do not have the status waste. So that's the first good thing they have. So they transport it just as normal goods, I assume. And in Asia, unfortunately, I do not have any experience, but I assume it's almost the same. But maybe Niels can support in this field, because Tess is operating there.
Yeah, maybe to add on what has been discussed, right? And the question was, is it getting better? So in the US, it might be reversed, because I heard they had some incidents and they're catching up on the regulation, right? So first, I think they have to get basic regulation, but generally it's one country. So while it's still in the Germany, also the state of Hesse has different laws than the state of Bavaria, and waste is treated differently, right? So it's not only in Europe. But obviously within Germany, it's much easier, similar within the US. But the Basel Convention, under which those notifications run, is a global convention, right? And most countries have signed into it. So even if you have batteries from Australia to Singapore, right, or Australia to New Zealand, those waste regulations, the moment the country has signed the Basel Convention, are applicable, and most countries have signed it. But still, they make it easier, I would say, to their clients, right? So transporting a battery from Thailand to Singapore needs a notification as well, but that process is much faster and probably by now much more digitalized as it is in us. But giving you example, I mean, OEMs have dealers, right? And the dealers is a small shop, right? So this small shop gets an electric car, right? And it's for scrapping, right? Probably he's able to take out the battery, right? Maybe he has the right license to take out the high voltage battery, but then he has that battery. So that car is for scrapping. So he has only that one car, but only for this one battery, he already needs a license to store it, as Philip said, right? And obviously all the dealers are not ready yet, right? All the small shops are not ready to have a waste license, right? So here it starts to be very complicated. And back to the question is, does it get better? I know there's many associations, right? Global Battery Associations, European Battery Alliance, and others. There's also Recharge, you might know. And they actually on their website have written a letter, right, to simplify the transport in Europe. Because the battery regulation came out, but it was not really led by the DG Tran, right, which is the transport. So here, I think with the amount of different chemistries coming on board, with the amount of batteries, there will be some kind of tsunami compared to today, the small amount of batteries we have today. It will be very, very difficult to be efficient as a company to transport those batteries within Europe, right? So here, it might not get better yet. So, because especially the administration is very complicated and it's not getting easier.
Yeah, one question that came to mind is when it comes to the different battery chemistries, right? I mean, we basically had lithium-ion NMC batteries. Now we're having LFP batteries that are supposed to be a bit safer than the NMC batteries. People talk about solid-state batteries, sodium batteries, and all these. And some of them are cheaper. Some of them are basically safer than others. Is there any discussion you're aware of at the moment in Europe, in your industry, that say, okay, we might change these crazily difficult standards in logistics for batteries because those products are getting safer? Or is it just still the same discussion of batteries? We don't want to touch their dangers. Let's put them in a 2-ton aluminium box. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a very good point, Sebastian. So that makes a very big difference, right? What chemistry you have and the danger you're transporting. So there are two things. One is the battery as a loaded battery, which has the risk of catching fire, and there's energy in the battery, right? So that's one risk. And there, the chemistries make a big difference. But then there's also the metals themselves, right, which are hazardous, which are included. So that's simply waste, right? Whatever metal is in the battery is looked at as a potential waste and can contaminate water or ground and whatever. And I know, for example, that the new sodium-ion batteries are already as samples out in the market, right? They're shipped around. And Philip, correct me if I'm wrong, but the legislation hasn't caught up yet, right? All legislation is on lithium-ion batteries, and no one knows how to ship sodium-ion batteries because it's just not a lithium-ion battery, right? So, so there's still a lot I think to be done in Europe and in different member states to look at the different chemistries. But the good thing is that most new developments and chemistries, first of all, they want to get cheaper, so they take the metals out, and those metals are hazardous. And second is there, you mentioned it, Sebastian, that the batteries get much safer, right? So the risk of catching fire or having a shortcut and exploding or whatever are getting less and less. So I think the bureaucracy in a way has to catch up with that, and it should get easier to transport those batteries going forward.
Just to add a couple of points. Yeah, you're right. The sodium batteries have the same UN number as lithium batteries. So from a transport perspective, it's treated completely the same. But there is a difference when we speak about just batteries or waste batteries, because I'm not a history expert regarding the history of waste, but what I learned so far is that in the past, people in Europe did a lot of bad things with the waste. So they just throw it in the local forest or put it in the ocean. And that has nothing to do with the batteries itself. So the batteries are hazardous waste mainly due to the water poisoning factors and the hazardous materials inside. But I think the biggest hassle comes from the waste factor, not from the dangerous goods factor, because we can set up a warehouse where we store new batteries, but there the legislation is not so well as well, because even the water protection class is not clear. In Germany, we have several warehouses, and there are different water protection classes we have to use for the batteries. So there are different standards from different regions, and there's no clear guideline on this. The fire protection is not regulated by the government or the local authority at the moment. They have only basic information how it's really done. mostly it's done by your insurance company, and they created a guideline how to store or how to make the fire protection for battery storage. So this is the main factor to find an insurance company who will insure your storage. And I think it's almost the same with your recycling facility. And there have different recyclers, different insurance companies, different approaches. How high are the standards? And it's really an individual topic. Do you relocate the batteries? Do we speak only about batteries that are totally okay from a status as green batteries, or have we critical defective batteries? Then it's almost impossible to store them. And that's another perspective I wanted to bring in.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I recall that at some point I looked for a storage for basically dangerous batteries with a waste code classified as red. And I was given quotations here in southern Germany for, I think it was 30 euros per square meter per month. And I thought, okay, this is sort of like an apartment in downtown Munich for an old battery in a warehouse, a bit of a rip-off. But what you just mentioned is there seemed to be a total lack of supply of adequate storage spaces here in Europe for batteries, especially for waste batteries. You also mentioned that there doesn't seem to be a sort of like, on the legal side, there's not a national law, a European-wide law to determine what do you need actually to store a red battery, correct? So it's always going back to the local authorities, calling in the fire brigade, having them a check. So from your experience, how hard is it at the moment to sort of like get the storage facilities for recycling batches here in Europe?
When we're speaking about larger storage facilities and we do not work together as partners, as recyclers and OEMs, then we see it as a risk that is not calculable. Because, for example, we need some kind of, we need the BIMSCH, so the Bundesemission Law certification. So this is a certification where not only the authorities involved, the local people that are living around are involved as well, and everyone is asked if it's okay for them to store here batteries as hazardous waste. And if a couple of guys say no, then you have to open a lawsuit. So the time for the certification, even if you have the storage is ready to go, then you need to get all the certifications, and this is a process of at least 9 months. The reality shows it's more than a year or 1.5 years. And speaking about just a medium-sized storage of 10,000 square meter, then you have to finance this 1.5 years for the certification somehow where you are not operator. And this is about 1 million, 1.5 million or something like this, plus the construction cost, plus the financing cost. And so it's a huge risk for all companies at the moment to go into the market, because the end of the certification is not clear. The local authority can say after 12 months of the certification process, it's already finished, the building is finished, they can say, no, we do not do this here. You will not get the certificates. And then you have a storage with no certifications. So the risks are at the moment extremely high. And this has to be changed from my point of view, because from an investor perspective, you need more clear business case in the end.
Yeah, it's very localized. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, please.
Add one example, like where we have looked for different sites in Europe. In some countries, they offered you a 10 to 20,000 capacity tons per year for cycling capacity, but storage only 60 tons, right? Which obviously is very difficult to manage. And the 60 tons actually come from the local fire brigade. And then they ask you to put containers which are connected to fire brigade outside 10 meters apart each container. So you need huge space, right? So very difficult, very different. So the people who win actually are those who have old permits, right? Who have old existing permits, old BIMs, as Philip mentioned, where it's kind of just covers everything. But the moment you apply new, you have a challenge. What we also realized last year was that a lot of OEMs had stored their batteries because they were waiting for the recyclers to recycle the batteries. But once you have that storage allowance, this is only also for 12 months, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Philip. Because after 12 months in Germany, for example, you need a deponie permit, which is a different permit, right? So you have to clear a battery after 12 months, or you need another permit. So storage is a huge challenge, and again, we are talking about small amounts of batteries, but in 5 to 10 years we will have many. So we'll have to see how we solve that.
And the biggest challenge is there at the moment that the challenges for your storage are almost the same if you store 100 tons of batteries or 1,000 tons of batteries. So to make the logistic work, we have to create a couple of consolidation storages to consolidate the smaller goods, bring it on a large truck, ship it a longer distance, and then bring it to wherever we want or wherever it should go. That's a huge investment we have to make at the moment in the market, where we do not know when it will come back. Will the market be? What is the market volume in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? That's another topic we have, because we are seeing unpredictable volumes from the customers as well. They say here the volumes are that high. We have 10,000 tons of battery scrap per year. In the end, it's 2,000 tons. I think we are all seeing this in this industry. And when you make your business case for the 10,000 tons and you invest it for that, and you only get 2,000 tons, then it's a big challenge from a financial perspective as well.
Yeah, so basically, to sum up, then we have on the one hand the challenge of the physical moving stuff across borders, especially for waste. But then we also have the challenge about storing waste batteries here in Europe, particularly in Germany. And what I read from you is that if you are a logistics company with a bit of spare change, it would be a worthwhile investment in just buying those old recyclers or old waste companies that have old permits and can store that stuff on their ground. Am I correct in that understanding?
Yes, we searched for these companies, but
you're not alone.
We are not alone, and there are only a couple of companies that have really the right certificates, because that's a huge topic as well. The knowledge about having the right certificate is very, very small in the market as well, because some people say, we can do this, and then you make the legal check, and then the waste code is not included for the batteries. That's an issue, and then the facility is out, because then you have to apply for a new BIMS with the waste code included. And in general, the facilities that got the BIMS 20 or 30 years ago will not get it today.
Yeah.
But only personal opinion could be different.
There was an interesting question on the chat here, and that said, well, we know we have those challenges here, particularly about storage and transport. Are the politicians or are the lawmakers aware of these? I know we have a lot of, basically in our battery bubble, in our circular economy bubble, we have a lot of people talking about that. But how aware are the lawmakers in Berlin and Brussels and Strasbourg about these, that we need to sort of like change that, standardize that? Would you say that they are aware of it, but it takes time, or is it something that we really have to stuff in their face to make a change?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier the battery associations, right? Or you could negatively say lobbyists in a way, right? Who for each industry you have those associations which put a voice forward, right? Either in the local government or especially in Brussels. And if you go to the Recharge website, some of the challenges actually are mentioned, right? And they're talking Brussels to the right people. But yeah, I think it's not seen as urgent as yet, right? And I think there are industry players also who say, it's a good market barrier, right? So not everyone can. So if you can play in that complicated field, right, and can offer services to your clients with that challenges, actually it's good for those companies who can do it, right? So that's why Philip and me, we are still here, right? As well as economics. Because others who start new from scratch, I mean, they potentially give up, right? It's very complicated. But nevertheless, this is for now. And I would agree that for the next 5 to 10 years, things need to change. And we need to continue to raise our voices in the respective associations and other groups and conferences, right, to talk to the right people and share the challenge.
From my perspective, it's the regulatory is in general good that we have it, because it's kind of an achievement we have, but the bureaucracy we have behind and the long waiting times we always have to set up a notification when we can make it with an online form and it's and we get the approval after 2 days, then no one would tell you a bad word about it. I think the laws are in general good that we have a tracking, because we have seen in the past that with waste it's always treated, or not always, but when there is an option to save costs, many people will save costs. And so that the regulatory is there is good, but we have to make the whole bureaucracy faster and more lean. So it's more the government has to make their own work to help us to make the market possible, or to bring better solutions faster on the market with not so much risks for us from planning perspective. But yeah.
So basically, it's digitalization, right, that is lacking. I hear that through.
And yes. Not only here, right? That's a different topic. We do another webinar for digitalization.
Yeah. I heard there is one comment.
Yeah, we do have a question. The question is, can you explain how large-scale batteries intended for recycling ended up being sold on the black market? I recall this being a significant issue around 2 to 3 years ago. Would be the question.
So sold beyond market, or what was it exactly?
Ended up being sold on the black market.
Oh, on the black market.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we come from the e-waste, and just give you examples, right? If 10 containers of e-waste are going to Hamburg, right? Only a few of them are checked, right? And still containers actually go to Africa and places where they shouldn't be. So even with all, that's why we have those regulations. And I agree with Philip, right? We need those regulations. But the enforcement, even with e-waste, which is kind of around for a long time and regulated clearly, and everyone knows about it, is still not working, right? So things go where they shouldn't go, as long they're caught, right? But then some containers are caught, and they still make money with the other containers who are not caught. And in the battery world, it will be the same, or is already the same, right? We also continuously hear that waste goes to China, right? Waste goes to India or other places, right? It goes without notification. And that goes as long as people are caught, right? And they close shop, but probably they open, same people open up again around the corner, right? So this needs enforcement. Again, this needs administration to make sure this is not happening. But it continues to happen. And obviously, it's not good for us who do a proper business, because that takes business away from us, right? In illegal ways.
In that discussion, do you think the battery passport will help on that? Since the idea, I understand, is that sort of you have the complete traceability. So at the end of the day, you could see, okay, there's a battery somewhere in the country. It was supposed to go to recycling, but it never reached the recycler. Do you think that's going to help in the future to stop that practice?
Yeah, from my perspective, from what I know about the battery passport, that function is not really there to track it in a way. Where is it, or is it still legal, or is it illegal? Right? I mean, it just disappears from the radar, and if there's no law enforcement to make sure it is still need to be traceable, which I think it isn't, they might still disappear, right? Because obviously the people who know they are doing illegal work, they will not go to the battery passport and say, "Hey, I have it in China now," right? So they will do everything to delete any traces. So I don't know if that helps, right? So far, I haven't seen the battery passport tackling that problem. More the tracing of the material and the mining and the greenhouse gas emissions, etc.
But when it comes to battery recycling, would you agree that, especially with those batteries that still have a positive material value for recycling, like NMC batteries, the big car batteries, that once we have capacity here in Europe to recycle, there's actually a tendency of those to stay in Europe because after all, you probably get paid for this old battery. So there's less of an incentive than shipping them and dumping them in the sea.
Well, it's a global business, right? It's and if someone has a business case doing A, which is legal, and B, which is illegal, and B is better, they might choose B. So yeah, I mean, if logistic prices are crazy, like when they were when the Ukraine war started, right, or we had other challenges in the logistics industry, then the European market is much more attractive, right? But if logistic prices are lower or normal as before COVID, whatever, there was more business cases to ship the waste around the world, right? To get it to places where probably there's a better business case. So I think it's a business case, and I agree in a way. If we recyclers or the recycling industry, reverse logistics industry in Europe is competitive, right? And that's why we need administration to make it easier for us, right? If we are competitive, then it doesn't make sense to ship it abroad, right? But with all the administration, non-digitalization, etc., what we just have mentioned, it is difficult to be competitive.
One last question, then before we go to the questions. Philip and Niels, you both basically deal with batteries. Niels, you're on the recycling end. Philip, you're basically on the transport end. So that means you ship basically new batteries, but also on the reverse logistics side. Now, we've heard that it's still not yet the time when we see an increase in quantity in reverse logistics, simply because EVs, electric vehicles, haven't been out for such a long time. We've seen all these electric scooters and stuff slowly coming back, changing batteries. When do you think is the curve going up so that we're really hitting quantities where logistics is going to be cheaper? Are we 2 years away, 3 years away, 5 years away? And similar for you, Niels, when do you think are we at a point that recyclers in Europe have enough fleets to really run their facilities?
So from a logistics perspective, so it's hard to say what is cheap, what is not cheap, where it is the limit. So we from year to year we become cheaper, and when we, for example, look into the total volume in Germany, so from all car manufacturers, for example, we could set up a good system that would work like it would work maybe in 3 to 5 years. But for that system, we would need all car manufacturers plus all recalls. That's not realistic and to achieve, because no one, so you will not be the single source for a whole market. And then there are other markets that are quite behind, or a little bit behind us, like Spain, Italy, or Portugal, or Greece. And in these countries, it will go it will need much more time. But we say from 2030, we have a quite well-developed market in Germany, and it takes time to set the market up. So you have to do the work now to be operational to the time.
Yeah, maybe from a recycling perspective, I mean, there's no regulation today which stops cars which are EV going the same way as cars who are ICE, right? So if a car is ready to recycle, I mean, there are statistics out there that most Teslas at the moment go to Ukraine. And as you know, Ukraine is not EU, right? So they're gone, right? They're not coming back. This is not volume which normally the European companies can touch on. So that's kind of an open question, right? If the EVs are in the same way staying in Europe as the ICE engines, this is a certain percentage, right? It's not all, right? A lot of them are actually disappearing also to Africa. Second is recyclers also take other material, right? The production scrap, right? Which is in two forms, right? One is the cell manufacturers. We had announcement of 2 terawatt hours in Europe, as you know. Some already delayed now, but there's a lot of production scrap coming to the market from the cell manufacturers, and there's also production scrap coming from the OEMs who actually buy the cells in Asia mainly still, and then produce models and packs, right? And that is also production scrap. So we normally look when are the production scrap volumes caught up by end of life, right? Because these end of life batteries at some point will get larger. And I think in the past we said 2030, but when you read the news, the batteries stay much longer in the car, right? They can run much longer because people don't use their cars so intensively, right? Like a taxi or like a commercial vehicle. So maybe 35, I would say there's end of life really picking up. But before that is production scrap. But here the same thing applies that not all stays in Europe. Even production scrap today is shipped to Asia and to North America. So for the recycler, it's, as Philip mentioned very early, right? We just had a tender. It was 10,000 tons, and now it went down to 3,000 tons because the company said we are putting on hold 2 sites, right? So it's a continuous change of volume, and yeah, you need to take some risk to invest, because if you invest into a recycling facility in Europe that costs you still single million, right, close to double-digit million. But if you want to go the next step, a hydrometallurgic process that can easily go in the 100 or more million investment, right? And then the chemistries are changing, right? The regulation is changing, many things are changing. So it is not a very predefined business here you have for the next 5 to 10 years. So for every year there's change, and you have to be very flexible to adapt to the current changes in the market.
Perfect.
And all the customers are working against us because they do not want to produce waste, and because it's a cost factor in the end. So they want to enhance the life of the batteries as long as possible. So yeah.
Coming back to the waste discussion, we have one more question, Inga.
We do actually, and we just have a couple minutes left. So as brief of answer as you can to kind of answer this question. There are some discussions with some countries about listing batteries under EWC 160605 as green listed waste. Do you see a possibility of that happening in Europe as well?
So yeah, EWC 160605, that's the European Waste Catalogue, and that typically describes waste as other batteries and accumulators, and which is classified as absolute non-hazardous, so easier to ship around, right? So the question is, do you see that happening in Europe as well, Philip, basically from a regulation point of view? Or will we be in a situation that in the future, whatever the battery is, I'm scared, put it in a box and make it a super complicated transport?
So I see a strong trend that it goes into so in the past, often the 160605 were used, but now most of the customers from us using the 600121 asterisk. So the hazardous waste code, and out of my perspective, this is the right way to do it, because then we have the strategic point to keep it in Europe, what is important for us, because it's kind of a mine we have, the recycling here, and so we should keep it to the 16121 asterisks.
So at one thing I can confirm that the GRC of the European Commission, right, the Joint Research Commission or Committee, I'm not sure what the C is for, is actually working on harmonizing the waste codes in Europe, right? Because that's a challenge. So the harmonization in a way for that is required, because otherwise a local authority can give different waste codes and make it easier for some companies than for others. But yeah, I mean, for us, the next step is also the product we have, right? The black mass. It's the first step out of the mechanical treatment, right? Which in some countries in Europe is still hazardous waste, and in others it's not. So here, I think definitely harmonization is required to make it simpler and more efficient to work as a European company.
Great. Well, time has flown and we are out of it. But as we wrap up our time together, I want to thank all of our panelists for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. Also, thank all of you who have joined us today. If you have further questions about the topic, we encourage you to reach out to any of us. You can find all 3 websites listed in the live stream notes on YouTube. We at Circunomics want you to keep your eyes open for the next live discussion coming towards the end of the summer. And with that, we wish you a lovely remainder of your day, and we look forward to engaging with you all again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for joining.
You.
Thank you so much.
Ciao. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.